Greetings. This is Charles Young II coming to you from a different perspective on life. I want to talk a little bit about the uh, voting acts law that was passed in the state of Georgia, and I got a guest, Dr. Harold G. Dacus, on the line. Dr. Dacus, you there?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing, sir?
I am fantastic and blessed. How are you?
I'm blessed like you. Before we proceed, were you aware of the law that was passed in the state of Georgia, the Voting Acts law that was passed in the state of Georgia in March of this year?
Is that the one regarding the restriction of providing refreshments for someone standing in a voting line?
No, 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 no. But let me give you some facts here, okay?
All right.
Okay. August 6th of 1965. Remember President Lyndon B. Johnson?
Yes.
Okay. Remember he signed the acts bill that would give minorities the right to vote.
Yes.
In 1975, there was another bill passed that protect language minorities from voting discrimination.
Correct.
Now it seems that Georgia passed a new 98-page election law passed by the GOP and controlled by the legislation and signed by Republican Governor Brian Kemp at the end of March. Now, this has stirred a nationwide debate over voting rights in the wake of the 2020 election. Now, writing the bill, Georgia lawmakers debate several high-profile charges. Its voting laws, including banning Sunday voting, which was a tradition for some black voters, following church services, and getting rid of the no excuse absentee voting, which passed in 2005 by Republicans. Now, the effect of the new law on Georgia's 7.4 million voters will be mixed. It contains new restrictions on absentee voting. Now, it seems at the same time expand early voting opportunities, the law also formalizes provisions that were put in place to accommodate voter during the coronavirus pandemic and changes the composition of the state election board. Now, it's very interesting that it seems as though Congress is trying to set us back as minorities. How do you feel about that?
All right. Now, is this Congress passed or the Georgia state legislature, the state of Georgia?
The state of Georgia, I'm sorry, the state of Georgia. I
Okay.
apologize.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, we all understand a lot of the undercurrent that's causing this, the workings, behind the scenes. And this is an extension of the Trump supporters who were claiming the results not being valid for the election. And I think that what has to happen is that the people have to go back and remember next time they go to vote for these individuals in these state positions to ensure this is overturned by voting in new legislators who do not support this kind of so to speak, turning back the clock.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I agree with you, but I don't think we as minorities understand what's taking place. Because if Georgia passed this, then you have Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, and West Virginia, and Florida also as well. You understand where I'm coming from? And it can progress to the other states as well. I see it as this is just how can I say it? An experiment. I'm saying to see how far they can go.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, there's always going to be a testing of the waters, and when we vote people into office, this is why got to get away from this just voting a party, because see, we're not electing parties. We should be electing individuals who will promote and support the rights of the people, not the agendas of a particular party or group.
You're right. I agree with you 110%. We should vote those who actually have our best interest in hand. But if they can discourage certain voters from voting, then they can actually take control and have it back the way it used to be. You understand where I'm coming from?
Oh, absolutely. But this is why you have to go back to the community efforts and the grassroots groups who help to get the voters out and make sure and ensure as many voters as possible can get to the polls, but also that they are properly informed on the candidates being voted for.
I mean, I agree. Now, let me ask you a question. You've been in the state of California. How could that actually take place? Knowing who you're voting for, the background check and that type of thing.
Well, reading they publicize the voting records. They publicize um, which legislators vote on certain laws and how they vote. It's just a matter of keeping up with the reports that are printed in the news media and listening to the debates between candidates and individuals, and also because it's a matter of public record, you can also get information on their past voting patterns for those who are already in office, and then you got to read the literature and do the research even on new candidates and why are they running for the office. So you got to really listen to their campaign speeches and what they're espousing in their speeches, and so it's going to take some effort and work on the part of the voter, and not just rely on the party's take, on an individual, and because they are part of a particular party or group, then you just vote for them because you think that they represent you as a citizen.
I see. Now, I agree with you 110% right there. Now, actually, you have those like Dr. King. He did a lot for us, and he took the shoulders. He took the shoulders of the black community. He took the black community on his shoulders. Excuse me, and he did a lot for us. And him and his wife, his children, are doing the same thing to keep the King legacy alive. But it seems as though you know, uh, some of us is lackadaisical. It seems as though some of us are giving up on the system, as though, well, if I vote, it's not gonna make a difference, that type of thing, and this type of thing, and that type of thing. I always tell people, when you vote, the local vote is more important than the federal vote. Am I correct?
Well, both are important, and because a lot of your federal folk came from the local and state, uh, um, political arena, but it also is re-educating this generation on what the previous generations, uh, what their work was and why they had to do that, because of the suffering of the generations prior. So each generation, we've had a few generations now that have not, suffered suffering of our people and why we are where we are. So this re-educating the current generation and preparing them to defend against going backwards.
Right. Now, were you aware there's 18 amendments in the Constitution? Am I correct?
Say that again.
There's 18 amendments in the Constitution,
yeah.
right? Were you aware? Were you aware that the first 12 amendments was not written for us as Black people? Were you aware of that?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Now, do you understand that that Amendment 13 through 17 was written for the African Americans? Were you aware of that?
Yes.
And were you aware that the 14th Amendment was written for the Civil Rights Movement? It was rewritten when the Voter Rights Act passed in 1965. Were you aware of that?
Right.
Okay. Now, say for instance, you understand the Constitution, right?
Right.
And the Constitution is the what? Govern us as people, right?
Yes.
Well, we as minorities can put a right, not a right, but a demand on the 14th Amendment of the Constitution about our rights to vote. Am I correct?
Correct.
Now, if we were to do that, what would be your opinion actually to mobilize us to do that and to make sure that this comes to pass?
Well, this is what I'm saying. You know, the people have to mobilize together, but they have to be educated. As to what was happening then, why the amendment had to be enacted, how it affected us, what changes did it make for us socially and politically, and then you have to get the people to see the value of it, and also to have an appreciation, and then once they're educated, make sure that they fight to maintain that and even make improvements on what already is.
Right. I agree. Now, Dr. King made a statement that we're not the promised land, but one day we'll get to the promised land, which was a prophetic utterance from God. Now, actually, we're not there yet, but we're halfway there. But I personally feel if we don't act and help those, especially his children, is carrying on his legacy to make sure that everything he worked for would not be removed, disintegrated, all that type of thing. We have to do our part to get involved. Now, I don't know about you, but if you desire to see what you can do to help, there's a website called the King Center, thekingcenter.org. I would encourage you, your listeners, when you get on your television broadcast, if you want to, let them know what's happening, okay?
Yes, sir.
And thank you very much, Dr. Dacus. You have taught me a whole lot from the time you knew me when I was not born again, till the time you led me to Christ, to the time you helped me, even taught me the things of the Bible I did not know. If it was not for God using you, you're one of the people I could say I wouldn't be here today.
Well, praise God for that, and keep up the good work. The more we inform, it's like when we came out of slavery and we had the unwritten law, each one teach one. And as much as we learn and know, we're obligated to teach others and to continue to build our legacy for the benefit of all people.
Right. And also, before I get off there, those who are listening on YouTube, this is the man that laid hands on me, not only prophesied my calling to be a prophet to reach young people, at-risk youth, but also laid hands on me. God used him as an instrument to deliver me from epilepsy. That was in October of 2003.
Praise God.
And it's 2021, June, and still haven't had a seizure yet.
All right, man.
Yes, sir. Well, Dr. Dacus, I appreciate you, man. I know you're very busy. You got to go on about your business. I know you're an entrepreneur and also apostolic father. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for tuning in, also as well on your input. Until next time, Dr. Dacus and YouTube family, have a blessed one.
All right, be blessed.
You're right. Bye-bye.